The Fujicast is an independent Loading Zone production.
Kev's in his new office. You've got everything fitted now. You've got hot and cold running, beer on tap. That would be nice, wouldn't it? What else have you got? You have got the internet.
I am here. It's bliss.
Yeah.
I do have a fridge, actually. Gemma said, what are you going to get next? A hot tub.
You've got the room, Kev.
I have got the room.
Yeah.
I've got loads of room. It's a little bit lonely, to be honest with you. I have to say, it's me and this, massive for me anyway. But it's good. Yeah, the internet man came this morning after many weeks of, we'll be there on Tuesday. And he came, very nice chap from BT OpenReach. He was here for, I counted it, about 87 seconds.
Didn't you say he was sitting outside eating a banana the last time you saw him? Or something. The good old British workman.
He came in and he said, right, where is it? I said, it's there in the corner of the room. We're both masked up and, we're doing the COVID dance around each other. Yeah. And he went, right, has it been connected before? I said, yeah, probably. I said, because, I moved in on the 1st of March. He went, right, okay. He unscrewed it. He went, right, I'll be back in a minute. And off he went, sat in his van, had a banana, came back, stuck a screwdriver in it or something, said, right, it's working now.
There we go.
That was it. And then I had to wait for the internet people to switch it on, which they did. It's the most exciting thing that's happened to me.
And the greatest thing is, Gemma's going to. Gemma's going to say you never need to come home again.
I was doing a Lightroom 1-to-1 last night on Zoom, and bless her, really lovely lady from America, one really good photographer as well. And I was in my living room. The dogs were barking. The internet kept dropping down because obviously we live in Malmesbury and there's like one wire into the whole town. And it was just hard work, so hard work. But now I'm here, yes, and I've got my super fast broadband. I've got everything.
And what she didn't know last night is you were doing it in your underpants.
The Fujicast.
In Kev's underwear. That's if you've had a mentoring session with Kev of late and he's been at home, I know that he has been just sat there in his underwear. Ain't that the truth, Kev?
That's the end of that business.
Anyway, welcome along, you and your questions on the Fujicast today from our electronic mailbag, and of course also through the Fujicast private Facebook group that you're welcome to become a part of. Kev, while he's in Bunker Malmesbury, he's doing the Facebook questions, I'm doing the email questions and the bump to the fronts. So send them in either via the Facebook group or by email to click@fujicast.co.uk. If you're not a Fujifilm shooter, do not worry, it's a big community and whatever flavour you shoot, you're very welcome. Thank you to our friends who are supporting us on Patreon. We'll do some bump to the fronts in a mo. Kev's Book of the Week, what do we have this week, Kev?
Oh, we've got another good one. Everybody's favourite, Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Ooh, okay.
And his scrapbook.
So how much is this one worth? 500
Oh,
quid,
no, this is highly available as well. I'm making a point because I got a couple of very pointed emails saying, it's all right for you. It's all right for you and your bookshelf. What about us? We need to be able to buy them. So, yeah, and that's fine. So this is still available on Amazon and all that kind of stuff.
Did she really talk like that?
Good book. It's a good book. But next week, I'm going back highbrow.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So watch out.
You'll be in trouble, just like I am with, I think it's Ali Shadpur that's always moaning about the fact that, he doesn't like the fact that I play this out for the horse, and I noticed in the ideas for the show that I need to replace this, which is what Gemma recorded it. I'm not replacing it. Today's guest is photojournalist Danny Lawson as well. We find out all about what it is to be a photojournalist, Kev. Should we start with some bump to the fronts? And we've got to do the print swap. We've got to do bump to the fronts, print swap, and there was something else as well, wasn't there?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about that thread that we put in Facebook about ideas for the show.
Oh, yes. Okay. Let's start with... there's three just short mentions here in Bump to the Front. Hludis, he said new kit from Orbit. He's talking about... do you remember when we were talking about SD cards? And if ever one let you down slightly, what would you do with it? Would you pop it back in and would you use it again? Mm-hmm. And I think we both decided if a card's ever let you down, you never let it back into your life. Mm-hmm. So that I think that he was just supporting that. Richard Yarp, hello Neil, hi Kev, thanks so much for the entertaining and informative podcast. I'm listening from a northern suburb of Houston. I'm not a pro, just an avid enthusiast getting ready to trade my Nikon D750 for a Fujifilm X-T4 after falling in love with that system from using an X100F. This is your gateway, isn't it, Kev, as you always say?
Yeah.
The X100. Thank you, Richard. And Mats Hatling Fernblad sent in, he said, by the way, that I got a B- for the pronunciation of his name. You got a C, apparently.
Yeah, I'm useless.
But no, you're not. Do you remember, though, Mats was the guy who was asking a question about how to photograph the birth of his daughter. Do you remember?
Yes. Yes.
How did
that go?
Had the daughter, and he said everything went perfectly. He means quick and uncomplicated. I was let into the hospital for the birth, but had to leave 4 hours after. My wife and our little daughter I'm never quite sure whether I should say the name. I know some people don't like that. Got to stay for 3 days. Bear in mind, I was a husband first, photographer second. So some of the intense moments I didn't reach for the camera, but I think he did for the rest.
And has he sent the pictures?
Yes. Yes, he has. So
right.
I'll give you the link for this.
They will be in the show notes. Yes. Assuming he's happy with that. Maybe we should check.
Well, he said you asked for the photos. Here's a link to the selection.
There we go then.
Now for making a photo book, he says. Oh, there we go.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. Welcome, if it's your first child, welcome to the most exciting part of your life ever. It's brilliant.
It's going to be a noisy part. Oh, congratulations. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Our eldest turns into a teenager this coming weekend. I can't believe it. I mean, Mats, one moment they will be I remember holding little Jack. I remember it. Come here, little one. And now look at him. Dad, you're so embarrassing. And it just does not seem like 13 years, Kev.
It does go quickly, I have to admit. Oh. But I also hate it when people say it goes so quickly. So I'm not going to say that.
But it does go quickly.
Well, I'm not saying it. However, make the most of it.
Because what? Why, Kev? Because it goes quickly.
Brilliant. It is brilliant. Every moment of it is brilliant. It is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Even the annoying bits are wonderful.
Do you remember the sleepless nights? Because I've completely forgotten about them. I think I've erased them from my memory banks.
Well, I have to be honest. I think, in fairness to Gemma, because she did the whole feed-in with Albie until he was about 11. It's like 18 months or I don't know, however long these things go on. But she took most of that strain. Bless her. So I didn't really worry about that.
Yeah, hang on a minute, Kev, though. But did you not do... I thought I should get up in the night just at least to try and make a cup of tea or something like that, just to be a bit of hubby support.
Oh, I never really thought about that at the time. No.
Okay, all right. You got away with that then, Kev. Right, print swap. Now, this is great, isn't it? Print swap. Instagram print swap. Yeah.
So, Instagram, in order to be in it, you need to hashtag FujiCast print swap.
Yep.
Very straightforward. And the plan is I think we're gonna run it for maybe another 5 weeks because I want to give it a good, a good crack of the whip. And I think that the idea is that you just tag it. I would say I think I've noticed a couple of people putting more than one image in, and that's okay. But I think you'll end up sending quite a few prints out. So maybe keep it to one.
Put up your favourite. That's the one you want to put up.
Yeah, so last week I was very down. I said, we only got 5. Now we've got 42, which is great. So FujiCast print swap, you can search, you can look for it. If you go into Instagram and you just type into the search box at the top, FujiCast print swap, you can even follow the hashtag. It would also be really good if you follow us on Instagram, FujiCast, obviously the podcast. And then at the end of it, in around 5 weeks' time, I'm going to try, if I can do this via Instagram, it might be a little bit difficult, but I'm going to try and collate everybody so they're geographically together. So I'm hopefully going to Yeah, sounds terrible saying this. British people with British people.
Oh, Kev,
we used to be European.
Yes,
but there's no point sending something to Europe because it'll take 6 months to get there,
and you get charged £85 for doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And then North America, and well, the rest of the world, you're just gonna have to fend for yourselves, I'm afraid. But we will do it. I'll be responsible for sorting all of that out, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to put a picture in, so I'm going to send a picture out and hopefully receive a picture. Oh, and it will be random, so you won't know. So the plan is I will message you all, ask for your addresses, and then I will send your address to somebody else, their address to somebody else, etc., etc., etc. And so that's the way it's going to work.
I know you shouldn't have favourites, but I've spotted a couple in here that I really like. I'll pick just one out for the moment. Number 19 photography in Gloucestershire, which isn't so far down the road from you, Kev. So this is winter in Gloucestershire, taken on Hasselblad with some Ilford HP5. It's a lovely one of those sort of it's sort of like a ramshackled old caravan that seems to have grown into the trees, or the trees have grown out of it, and it's one of those sort of, like, you can feel the cold and the dankness in the photograph. It's one of those sort of real documentary pictures that I know you love, Kev. It's sort of got a 70s feel about it. I do love it. Lovely shot. Love that. Yeah,
they're all great. All the pictures in there so far are amazing. Keep them coming. It's fun. It's just fun. Fun is the most important thing.
Yes. Right. Ideas for the show. Before we even get anywhere near your questions this week, Kev threw a spanner in the works and asked you to become executive producer the other day. I saw this come up. I thought, Kev, what are you doing? There's not enough to do. Now you've asked all for lots of new ideas.
Well, there was method in my madness.
Was there?
Yeah. So so that's what I did. I put a thread up, said, but actually, if you read the thread, I said, can you give us one thing that we could improve on the podcast? Oh, no. One thing that you would like different.
What was your method then in the madness? Did we have a meeting about this?
No, we didn't.
Oh.
However, I've noticed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've had a few direct messages and emails and things like that saying, not being negative as such, but saying things like, well, we still love it, and but you're often getting the same questions repeated and various things like that. So I thought, okay, well that's good. Let's throw it out to the people that matter, and what would you like to see that's different? And basically, of the 60 odd people that answered, 55 of them said make a YouTube live stream, which is the one thing that we cannot do.
No, well, I tell you what, it's about. We record this, just so you know, and then it's listened back to in real time and edited. And it's about a 5 hour, I think it's about a 5 hour process, something like that, just to do it as audio. I tell you, if you start doing that as a multicam, you'd be here forever. Happy to do that if all our thousands of downloaders and subscribers say, I'll give you £2 a month.
Well, we did talk about it, didn't we? Maybe down the line it's something we can think about. But right now, it's you're right. I mean, you spend an inordinate amount of time doing this. I spend no time.
No, you do. I mean, you turn up, you talk, Kev, and you do your print swap and all that, and your book review and stuff. We all do stuff for it. It's just that I think not the photograph, the filming of it, which is a lovely idea, and I think it would do really well. But if you start doing something, you have to see it through. And we've seen through, how many episodes are we now, Kev? What is this one? This is
176.
Is it 176? Is
Something
it?
like that. Is it? I don't know.
Let me.
Anyway, I don't want to be filmed right now. Not my hair. It looks ridiculous. Do you know what Gemma said to me? This is a terrible thing. Gemma said, with your eyebrows and your hair, you look like Gary Glitter.
What?
And Gary Glitter is not a nice person to be associated with.
No, you don't want to be compared to that.
No.
But
she's quite right. When I point my eyes in the air,
and
my hair sticks up, I need to.
No, well,
I've got a.
It's 173, by the way. That's where we are this week.
173. I've got a meeting tomorrow, a Zoom meeting, and I actually emailed them and said, look, I'm really sorry, but I am going to look like a crazy madman. You're just going to have to be prepared for what I look like.
Yeah. Well. Well, yeah, so it won't be on film yet, but I think it's a great idea. If it was our job, Kev, we could do it. But it would be a multicam experience, because there'd be one at you, one at your eyebrows.
I could have one in my eyebrows.
We'd have to be
eyebrow cam.
very careful about the lighting off my shiny head. So there we go. So
that's one for the back burner. Maybe
one for the back burner. But thank you very much for your ideas. No, I'm sorry as always to Ali that he doesn't like the sound effects.
But there were some other good ideas, and we will, once the print swap thing has been done, we will definitely be adding some new features of some kind.
Yeah. Perfect.
There we go.
Shall we go for questions?
Yes.
Are you going to go first?
Yeah, I can do.
Go on then.
So, I am going to the lovely thread in the Facebook group. And actually, it's the latest question, which was only posted 4 hours ago by Andy Stonia. And he says, working as a photographer since 1986, and I've never shot street photography once.
Oh.
At 54, am I too old?
Yes, move on. Next question. Of course not. I mean, look at some of the greats that are still out there doing it in their 70s and 80s.
I mean, John Mayowitz is the late 70s, early 80s, I think now.
Yeah, and he's still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, he's more doing fine art stuff now, I guess. But yeah, absolutely. No, of course you're not too old. Actually, it's an interesting question, though, isn't it? Because I remember having a conversation with you a few years ago about, the young whippersnappers in the wedding photography world, and do clients choose people based on what they look like, or they're if they're hipsters or they're young, and they do they look fit and trendy and all that kind of stuff.
Some might.
Yeah. I think it's a thing. I do think it's a thing. I think there's an element, not everybody, but I think there's some people. Yeah, you're right. I think some people would.
But sometimes you want a safe pair of hands. I still shoot weddings for younger couples, and I've had a couple of meetings of late when I've won them, and I'm doing their wedding, and they're probably a little bit younger than what I thought prior to lockdown, funnily enough, was becoming my then norm. So I'm not sure. A safe pair of hands is good. I mean, when you get on an airliner, Kev, when you look left, because I always take a little peer left when I get on an airliner, I don't want to see somebody that looks like they should still be in short trousers.
I trust them all. I trust all pilots. They have to go through all of the stringent tests. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. They are. Some of them do look about 15.
Experience, Kev.
Especially EasyJet.
I want to hear a first officer that sounds like, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be flying to the Bay of Biscay this afternoon at 35,000. I want to hear somebody like that. I don't want to hear somebody saying, all right, welcome aboard. It's good to have you here. That's not what I want to hear.
No, quite right. Quite right. But it's a very interesting point about age, though, because... we live in this world where, there's racism, there's sexism, there's ageism, there's an ism for everything, and there is a point to it in that you're never too old, absolutely never too old, and you have to. I feel like with the street photography, of course, that's just a hobby for most people. So yeah, get out there, do what you want. But for certain styles of photography and certain kind of aspects of it, then probably age doesn't come into it. No. I think there probably is an element of that. So
there's a lot of photographers I've spoken to that came over to photography quite late in life. Some fine art, some are documentary photographers, some are project photographers. But it's that idea that you've had some experience of life that helps you creatively moving ahead. I think. I think that's really important. Right, John Tamerlano. Hello to both of you. First of all, let me say I look forward to listening to your podcast every week. The great info, very entertaining. Yes, I plan to support you very soon. Thank you, John. Question, I have the XT30 and I love it and wanted to add to my kit with an X Pro 1 or 2. I'm an amateur photographer, so I'm wondering which would be the best. Also, will the X Pro 2 drop in price if and when the X Pro 4 comes out? Kev, is there a 4 coming out, he says, pointedly. Thank you for the feedback. Hope you and your family stay safe and healthy, from John. Not sure where to put the yes for a shout out, so I'll put it here. Well, you got your shout out. Oh, I see what you mean. Your website here. Yes, at 2 Moons Photography is his Instagram. So what do you think, Kev? 1 or 2? Well, I'm straight away going to say I use the X Pro 1 at the moment as my walk around, have fun with camera, but I wouldn't use it again in any kind of professional way, because the X Pro 2, of course, has got a few more bells and whistles, bit quicker. But yeah, I mean, would you go for a 1 or a 2?
Well, I mean, generally, the rule of thumb is that the higher the number, the better the camera, generally, right? So X Pro 2 is going to be better than X Pro 1. But there's a certain charm to the X Pro 1, and I think long term, probably the X Pro 1 will be the one that keeps its value more than the X Pro 2, 3, 4,
really?
5, 6, 7. The first generation. Yeah, because the original X100s, the X Pro 1, they're going to be hard to come by, and they were like I said, the gateways to this system. It's it's like first edition of a book, isn't it? I think they're the ones that are going to hold their value. But the X Pro 1 is simply not as good a camera as the X Pro 2. Simple as that. So if you're looking for a camera that you want to be to give you functionality, then X Pro 2. But if you're looking for a camera that's really a backup and you want to think about something that's a little bit more, I don't know, makes you think a little bit more, slows you down a little bit more, then X Pro 1 is the one as well. But it's ultimately, I get this question a lot. Often I get Facebook messages from people and they say, which one's best, XT3 or XT4? Or which one's best, X Pro 2 or X Pro 3? And I'm like, well, the answer is very obvious, which one's best. And it's up to you really to decide whether, and it comes down to budget, doesn't it, ultimately? And, elements like things like, do you want a D-pad? Do you not want a D-pad? Do you want a flippy screen gate? Do you not want a flippy screen
Don't
gate?
start that.
All of those things. Yeah. And so the higher the number, the better it will be. And that's the same for age. Yes, got that in. Well, me and you, Andy, we'll be out there, 55, 56. We'll be shooting street photography. All those young 15, 16-year-olds.
Forevermore. Some people really like the look of the files, though, don't they? Coming out the X Pro 1, it's that kind of the colour, the file that they don't feel that they're able to get out of anything after it. Yeah,
I mean, that's a sensor thing. So, the first generation X-Trans sensor is very different to, obviously, X-Trans 2 and 3, and then we're on 4. So, yes, you are going to get different things. And ultimately, that's to do with megapixels and the processor that they can process those megapixels with. So, the original X100, many people say that the Jpegs, when you manage to get it in focus, are wonderful. And I agree, I can't get the same thing out of the newer X100 ranges, but that doesn't mean that I would shoot with the X100, my original X100, professionally. I'd end up throwing it up against the wall. It's just not there anymore. But it's a beautiful thing to have, and I'll never lose it. I'll never get rid of it. When I moved the studio, I don't have all my camera boxes. Normally when I get a camera, I take the camera out. I take the battery out and the charger, if there's a charger. Everything else goes in the bin. The straps, the box, the manuals,
you don't keep
the
box.
cables.
Don't keep the box.
No, Christ. Why would you? If I kept all the boxes for all the cameras I have, I could build a house. I'm telling you now. It all goes. However,
Kev,
what I did find...
It's a resale value, Kev. That's why you keep your box.
What? So, no, that's not true. If that is a complete fallacy. Well, it's not a fallacy.
No, it's
You're
not.
absolutely right.
No.
Hang on. I've got a pedestal. I'm just getting on it. Hold on.
Okay.
Hang on.
There you are.
Right, I'm up on my pedestal. Now,
you're not that much taller.
Nobody in their right mind, if they are a professional photographer, not even a professional photographer, but anybody who's interested in photography, if they pay extra for a cardboard box, don't talk to me.
But when I sold your 35mm lens, I got more for it because it came in the box.
Yes, but that's because the person who bought it was an idiot.
Well, an idiot with money, then.
I'm sorry. I know there's loads of people out there now going, well, that's ridiculous because you will get more for it. Yeah, fine.
You will.
That's absolutely fine.
Yes.
But then, you know what? Recycle the cardboard, save the world, stop the trees being cut down.
Well, you are
do not have a cardboard box house.
Kev, you are recycling it by keeping the box to then pass on to the next person. That's how you do that. No, it's not.
What are they going to do? If they're the kind of person, they're the kind of people who only buy cameras that come with a cardboard box. They take the camera out, they use the camera, they put the cardboard box in their bloody corner. It never gets recycled, and then the trees die, and that's it, and all the cows fall over, and then we have Armageddon.
You've got to put your camera in a box at some stage, so keep the original one and recycle that one.
No,
Kev, it's not.
No, those people.
It's not. People. No, you know I'm right. You always argue, but you know I'm right.
No.
Mullin, stop.
Those people who will not buy or pay extra because it's got a cardboard box that they're never ever going to use. They're only buying that cardboard box because they think when they sell it in the future, it's going to make them a little bit more money. My God, it's a camera.
No,
you're paying £1,500 for the thing.
It's about looking out. Oh, well, it is what it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
All calm again.
Anyway, I got one of the other things that came up on the thread was
what's that?
I must stop secretly opening my beer under the table because it's quite obvious what I'm doing. So I'm just going to open one now without putting it under the table.
Well, yeah, we know you're doing it. Right, have we got time for another one of your questions? I think we possibly have. Yeah, go on, Kev. Do another question. Then we'll go into today's interview.
Problem with my bottle tops. Okay.
Ain't that the truth?
This is a good question from Carlo Carboni.
Yeah.
And he says, Carlo from Yate. Yate is only around the corner from me, actually. He says, hi guys, question about TIFF and JPEG files. Yes. Once I have edited a RAW file, is it better to save, export as a TIFF or a JPEG? TIFF files are larger and don't seem to lose quality, so better all round. But what is the benefit of a JPEG apart from the small file size? Also, if I want to share edits with a client, wouldn't it be better to share the TIFF files purely on their quality rather than the JPEG ones?
Well, it depends what kind of client you're working with. I mean, if it's a social photography client, no purpose at all. But if it's a big agency, yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, I'd say yes.
Yeah, I think, I would only ever supply TIFF files if the client asks for TIFF files. And that will be corporate, commercial, potentially magazines, print work stuff. TIFF files are huge, absolutely huge. And to go back to this point about JPEGs, if you've edited your RAW file and then you export the JPEG, yes, the quality is slightly, the human eye will not be able to tell the difference. Where it starts degenerating is if you then re-edit that same JPEG, save it, re-edit it, save it, re-edit it, save it, then the JPEG will start to deteriorate.
Starts to fall apart, yeah.
Yeah, but if you've got a Lightroom catalog or Capture One catalog with the original RAW file in it, and you go back to the RAW file, make your edit, export the JPEG, go back to the RAW file, make your edit, export the JPEG. Then you're not having any quality kind of defects. But I would never give TIFF files to a client unless they specifically asked for them, and I'd have to deliver them on the back of a tipper truck.
Well, there we go. That's that one sorted then. Right, should we go for this week's guest? Today, a chance to learn a little more about photojournalism with PA Media's Danny Lawson, who has some advice for those intrigued by the genre. He's a former British National Press Awards Photographer of the Year. He was also awarded for his pictorial news coverage of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's wedding. Note, we recorded this prior to the recent Oprah Expose programme, which, whilst not changing the fact I would have still been interested to talk about this particular highlighted picture, it would certainly have meant that I would have asked a photojournalist's opinion of how he feels or felt the press treat this couple in particular. A month or two makes all the difference, it seems, when scheduling an interview. What we do have is an interesting insight into the day-to-day with one of the UK's most respected photojournalists. Here's Danny Lawson. Danny, where you live in Yorkshire was possibly the best canvas from which to start a career in photography, but your first steps were like a lot of news photographers in a local paper, the Rochdale Advertiser, which means you would have been doing everything. You'd have been doing sport and local news, and I'm sure you'd have been doing stuff for the advertising part of it as well, and check presentations, all that kind of stuff, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a fantastic place to start. I started at the Rochdale Observer and the Rochdale Observer Group. So I think it was 7 or 8 regional local newspapers, and I worked across all the different titles. And as you said, it's really diverse. Yeah. Everything from, as you said, from football down to check presentations. It could be, golden wedding anniversaries, just your good staple, local newspaper stories.
Were you working under any particular photographers there that had been in the business years and years that were great for your initial time?
So Tony Cross is the first name that springs to mind. He was quite a character,
right?
And he was just a really, really talented photographer. Very, very much into his portraits, and he was just a great person to learn from.
And what about your advice then for new news photographers? Because the route has changed, and there's still many people that fancy being a photojournalist.
Yeah.
But the approach path is somewhat different, of course. Now, what would your advice be?
Just to be keen and to speak to as many people as you can, and you've got to be a self-starter. And there's a few people who spring to mind who, have contacted me maybe on Twitter or social media. And I know that they've contacted many other people as well, one just to actually ask for advice, but it's as much to open potential doorways in the future. And there's a good number of, younger lads that I see coming around, and they're basically looking for things to do. They're looking for either be the hot news story or sometimes maybe a feature, but then they're going off and they're doing it. There's no point in just expecting it to come to you, because it never will. You need to go out, you need to take pictures, you need to stay in contact with as many people as you can. And then, after you've got a few numbers for picture desks and they see your work coming in regular, then maybe they will throw you a shift. Potentially, if there was either a job opportunity at maybe an evening paper, or even something like if people see how keen you are, you could go maybe then use off the back of that, then go and get some work experience somewhere. But if you just phone up somewhere and say, I would like to be a photographer, but you've not shown willing, you've not been out, you've not taken photographs, you've not proved how enthusiastic you are, then it'll be lots of closed doors, I would think. One
of the biggest changes has been user-generated content, of course, hasn't it? And I was talking to Southwest News Services, and they were saying that sometimes as much as 50% can be user-generated these days. What's of the pictures that are coming in? That doesn't, of course, equate to what's going out and going to the newspapers, but that's what's physically coming in. So much stuff is being sent in.
So they were saying 50% of the content that they get or that they put out on their wire is user generated.
Well, I think what's coming in. Yeah, what's coming in.
Yeah, obviously I don't work on the picture desk, so I don't see how much user content we do get coming in. But I think it's very clear when you look at breaking news stories, be it a terrorist attack or, a large fire, more often than not, now it is, a user or reader generated content, isn't it? Yeah. And it's the professionals then going, photographing the scene, the next, obviously you go on the day, but then photographing the scene as it develops from that initial photograph. And that's just the way it is now. And I think at first, some photographers maybe were worried by that. I think it's less so now, because you're never going to be able to replace, high quality photography. So if somebody happens to be on the scene and they just get a picture that's impossible to get unless you were there at that moment, then of course that's going to be the front page picture. But there's plenty of room for professional, well composed, well exposed photographs that tell a story.
Well, we'll come back to good exposure in just a moment's time, because you've won awards for that. But we'll get to that. You left newspapers to join local newspapers, that was, to join your first agency, which actually was in Scotland, wasn't it? Which a lot of people would have been thinking, right, I've got to move south. This is where I've got to be on Fleet Street. I know it's not all Fleet Street these days, but I've got to be there. But you didn't. You went north.
Did. And I'll explain why I tried to go south. It's the short answer, and I tried to stay put, and neither of those worked. I was in the rather fortunate position at the time. As I said, I worked for the Rochdale Observer Group, which were particularly good payers for my age at that time. They also provided me with a company car that was taxed, MOT'd, serviced. And I was living in my first property. Now, I tried to, I'm not going to name the people for reasons that will become very obvious, but I got offered a number of jobs at regional agencies, and they offered me considerably less. One of which was in Manchester and one of which was down in London. Right. So I would have effectively had to take a pay cut to do it, a considerable pay cut if you consider that you were be living down in London as well. And then a job came up in Scotland at Deadline Scotland, and I actually contacted them and was offered an interview. And before I went up for the interview, I was just very honest with them and explained, what had been happening over the last year, and that I'd been offered a couple of different jobs that I'd sadly had to turn down when it came to the salary discussion. And they were very, very, very good, basically, and they improved my salary. Mm-hmm. And obviously, it was a huge step up. Really appreciative to Scott up there. And so, they offered me the job, and it was an increase in salary, and it was a fantastic opportunity to go to a national level producing content for regional and national newspapers.
Would it be fair to say you became a much bigger fish by making that move as well?
I don't think it would, to be honest. It was obviously, for myself personally, it was a big step forwards career-wise, because it was moving up the rung of the ladder. But the standard of photography in Scotland is just sensational. Yeah. You've got people like Jeff Mitchell, who's like multi-award winner. You've got Gordon Terrace, Ian Rutherford, again, all multi-award winners. So Jeff works for Getty Images, and the other two worked for the Scotsman and the Herald newspapers, or did back then. They were the big fish when I went up there, and they were the people that I looked up to, and they were the people I learned from. They really took my photography to the next level when it comes to lighting and understanding what quality photography is.
Because you're continually learning, aren't you? Even when you think you've got everything, then something else comes along, doesn't it?
I think if you ever get to the stage where you think you know it all, that is the time to pack it in, because nobody knows it all, and that just means you become complacent, you become lazy and arrogant, I suppose. Nobody knows it all.
Now, I know different agencies and the photographers that work within the structure, whether they're, well, I suppose it is different if you're freelance to whether you're full time. And I think you're full time, aren't you, with PA?
I am. Yeah, I'm staff. Yeah.
So you're staff. But when it comes to sometimes suggesting the stories, are you still? Do you still do that, or do you get commissioned?
No. Well, as in my day-to-day jobs that I cover.
Yeah, so you think, we've got to be covering this story, and you say this is what we should be doing, rather than being told, right, Danny, there's a story, go get it.
Yeah. Easily, and I would say easily, 90% of the photographs that I take, I've generated or decided to go and do myself, probably considerably more than that. The exceptions would be Royal Rotors. That normally comes through London. We'll be aware of that. They'll be aware of it before me. Political visits, things like that, they'll be aware before I'm aware, and quite often let me know about it. But basically, my job is to understand the patch, is to understand Yorkshire, is to understand what the news stories of the day are nationally and regionally, and to make sensible decisions to go and cover the correct job that day. And I really appreciate, it's one of the things that I really, really appreciate about PA Media is they give you the authority, I suppose, to do that, and they give you the trust to do that. And as long as you make sensible decisions and you're getting, good hit levels in the newspapers and online on the websites, then really the bosses let you get on with your job and let you do it, which is perfect.
About 18 months ago, you were named Photographer of the Year at the Society of Editors National Press Awards. There's a long title. Did they get that on? Did they manage to get that on the award all in one sentence?
Very good.
In a year where you started to collect prizes as well, it seems. So the prize, though, was for a fantastic photograph you made of Meghan Markle walking down the aisle. The judges called it ethereal. So, which it was, I suppose, because I mean, you had some quick fire exposure decisions to make that day, and I suppose we've ended up with a very ethereal picture because of the pools and shafts of light coming through those windows. It was a great photo. Can you just take me through that moment?
Yeah, well, I can take you through a little bit more from before, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just a split moment of the light coming through. So we needed to be in from the crack of dawn. I can't remember what time we got there, but it was certainly, before breakfast to be in position. And I was positioned in the organ loft in the chapel, which basically meant that Megan was going to walk right underneath or just under the position with myself looking down. But it also meant that I could look over where other people were arriving, other guests were arriving, and the light was very flat. And so for the entire morning in the build-up, the light was flat. And then after everybody got seated, these streams, as you said, like really, really intense direct sunlight coming through.
And I don't know how many stops of difference there was, but it looked...
I mean, 5, 6, 7, I don't know, a lot. A lot. And I was umming and ahhing of whether to try to balance it somewhere in between or whether just to go for the absolute, exposed purely for the highlights and just let everything go completely black. And to be honest with you, I got in somewhat lucky because I had a dry run because Harry actually walked down the aisle ahead of time. Right. And it gave me an opportunity to do a few tests effectively. Obviously, I was photographing Harry as well, but it was effectively a bit of a test. And I balanced it, erring towards, exposing for the highlights. Yeah. And then after looking at my pictures, I thought it would be even better if I just let the blacks go completely black, which is what I did. And when she came down, I knew at the time it was a very nice image, but I had 2 rolls that day. And as soon as Megan had gone underneath my feet, all the cameras were tethered, so I could instantly send the photographs. So my job was to take the pictures of Megan walking down the aisle, hit send on my camera, so those pictures were going to editors down in London, and then to actually cut across to the other side of the organ loft.
And you've got an event where there's no... this is a wedding, and just like wedding photography, there's no second chance on this one.
Well, that's the good thing about that job, isn't it? That there's no second chance. Now, clearly, on a job of that scale, your appreciation for the fact that there is no second chance goes up somewhat compared to somebody walking out of a court, for example, or arriving at a court. It's a different level of expectation.
Well, look, some photographers know they've instinctively got it. You can tell as you're taking, got that, nailed it, Danny. Thank you very much. Did you know that at the time?
Yeah, this is it. We're talking before about if you think you know everything, it's time to give it up. And I think something else that I've noticed in lots of professional photographers is they always see the bad and they remember the bad and forget the good. And so after Megan had walked down the aisle and after the service had finished, there was another opportunity where Megan and Harry had walked back out. So I'm doing the picture of the trail of the dress at this point, and they go through the archway where they were going to stand at the top of the steps at St. George's Chapel and do the kiss for the cameras that were waiting outside. And I thought in the back of my head, perhaps if I'm really lucky, I'll be able to see all the way down the nave of the cathedral through the door and see them kiss. And sure enough, I could. And I had a 400mm and I had a 1.4 with me. I can't even remember if I had the 1.4 on, to be honest. But certainly I had a huge telephoto lens, and I could just about see them through the doorway. And I shot it. And I wish that I'd left it just slightly further, composed slightly further down, because I had Prince Charles and a few other people who were giving them a clap. And I didn't shoot it like that. I shot it slightly further up and I cropped it just into the kiss and the kiss with a bit of an archway. And I was driving back home very late at night by this point, and I phoned my wife and she said, "How did you get on?" I said, I missed an image that I really, really wanted. I didn't shoot it in quite the way that I wanted, and that's what I remembered. And I said, I got another picture that I was quite happy with. It's a nice picture. But what I was fixating on was the fact that I'd shot this other picture, which, looking back now, was a less important picture. It was even if I'd composed it completely how I wanted, it wouldn't have been as good as the Meghan Markle picture. No, but the one that I remembered was
there's the irony, because the one that you didn't remember was the one that won you the award.
I knew it was good, but I just still concentrated on the other one.
I would imagine the stress of getting these pictures out at events like this has intensified somewhat, because essentially you're in competition with live feed television, and people are getting pictures immediately, and your job is to get stuff out on the wire as quick as you can.
That's 100% correct. That is the way you need to see it. And any large event, you are competing with TV. You're not competing anymore with print the next day, or even the websites. Clearly you are supplying the websites, but the websites photographs want to be as up-to-date as the live TV.
Do you still get the same thrill, Danny, seeing the pictures in column inches form? I ask only because we're so used to producing imaging to be, here, done, posted, swiped, move on. Is there still the thrill of seeing your work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't think that will ever die. There's nothing like opening up a newspaper and seeing, one of your photographs used, across a full page or over a full page, or sometimes even over 2 pages, on a particularly good day. I think that's one of the reasons why we all do it. That buzz that you get, and especially if it's on a news job and that lots of other people have been there. I mean, everybody's so competitive, but the vast majority of photographers in press are very competitive but very friendly with it. You'd never want to beat the competition in someone's scrupulous way. You wouldn't want to do them in or sabotage them. But the fact that you've got it in and it makes really large, it gives me a wonderful feeling. I
asked a wildlife and nature photographer what the most precious thing in his kit bag was, and he said to me, luck. What's the most important thing in your bag?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough question. I mean, there's not one thing. You've got to have kit that could go on any job at any time. So when I leave the house, it doesn't matter what job I'm going to. I've got a certain skeleton kit that I have to have. And if you say, oh, what's the one thing? If you took out any one of those kits, you then wouldn't be professional. So you basically have to have a 400mm. You have to have a 2x. You have to have a 70-200. You have to have, like 17-35 or some kind of wide angle. You have to have 2 cameras because we operate all the time normally with either a long or a mid-range on one camera and a wide angle on the other. Because quite often in the jobs that we do, you don't have time to change lenses. You would miss too many pictures. So and a couple of flash guns. And if I ever left the house without that kit and a tripod and a monopod, then there'd be a possibility I could be called to a job that I wouldn't have the ability. Well, I wouldn't have the equipment to cover it. So that's the skeleton kit, and then I add various things to that depending on what I know that I'm going to cover. Talking of kit,
well, I was talking with a photojournalist about the Hungerford massacre, the story that was in the 80s, and of course that was prior to digital. It was film days, and I remember having a discussion where he said, I was sent in that day to make pictures in Hungerford. And one of the issues was that I was already on a job and didn't have enough film. I had to helicopter it and drop it into a farmer's field, and I had to go out and get it and go back in again. In fact, that was the thing I remember most about that. The advantage of digital, of course, you've worked under both film and digital. Yeah. I would imagine the advantage now for news, you'd never want to go back to those days, would you?
Well, for news, you just couldn't. It's as simple as that. There's no want in it. Slow, it would be an understatement. We were just talking about the fact that I can take a picture and on a big job, if need be, that picture can be on a website 2 minutes after I've taken it. Now, if you put the time that it would take to take a film, dev it somewhere in a bag in the dark, develop it, scan it, you just couldn't. It's as simple as that.
That's the romance. Look, I saw an old BBC news piece, I'm sorry to bring this up, of you chasing the super blue blood moon, which apparently we won't see that again until 2028.
Correct.
Now, I'm not going to mention the dancing in the report. You moved well, Danny. You moved well.
I've got some funky moves, I think you'll find.
But the things that BBC local news reporters make you do. But you were chasing this picture on the report, teaching a journo how to photograph the moon, which I found quite interesting, actually. You'd chosen to photograph it with a Humber oil refinery in the background, so you could give it some context and some perspective, because that moon was going to look huge, wasn't it, behind the chimneys or funnels or whatever. But the clouds descended, and that 10-year opportunity just went with it, didn't it, really? But there was a question that intrigued me, and they shot it up as a caption. It was the night pointless? When you've been prepping for a shot, you've got a great idea, super concept, and it all falls apart. I'm not just talking about the moon here. I'm talking about what you do day to day. What do you feel?
It's certainly not pointless, is the first point to make. if it was, you'd feel devastated. And I quite often photograph the moon, whether it be a supermoon, whether it be a blue moon, whether it just be a full moon. You know, it's one of the things that I like to photograph. I just find the object fascinating. And I would say I nail a picture that I'm really happy with, maybe 1 in 10 times, something around that. Maybe get something, 2 or 3 times, and the other 7 or 8, completely clouded out. And it's incredibly frustrating because it takes a long time to prep these photographs. And sometimes it involves driving around several locations because there's so much you can do on the computer and on the apps planning. But sometimes, driving there and actually eyeballing it, there's no compensation for that, or nothing else you could do other than that. And so if you've spent several hours prepping, you've maybe been around 2 venues, you've then gone out way in advance, you've waited for it, and you've probably invested, just totting up a minute. You might have invested like 5 hours of your time to then literally have no picture. And it kills you, a little bit of you dies and a little bit of you thinks, I wish I was living in Barbados doing this. But then the times when you get it and you nail it, all the times that you failed, all the times that you've been stood freezing cold on a hillside somewhere are suddenly, worth it and then some.
Yeah.
And the fact that it doesn't happen any time just makes it, every time rather, just makes it so much more special when it does happen.
Just finally, Danny, what still motivates you? What gets you out there each day?
It's getting the images. It's as simple as that of, I'm still, after all these years, I'm still fascinated by photography. I'm still fascinated by the way that an image can move people, that it can stir emotions, that it can tell a story. And I'm privileged, thankfully, all the way through the coronavirus pandemic. I've been working 5 days a week, and I see people with their businesses folding, friends that I know who are, really, really struggling. Yeah. And to be able to go and do a job that I love through this period is just, you really brought it home to me how lucky I am to do a job that I enjoy. And I don't think I'll ever get tired of images. I don't think I'll ever get tired of appreciating other people's works and, hopefully trying to create photographs that other people like and enjoy to look at.
Our thanks to Danny Lawson from PA Media. Today on Photography Daily, if you like your interviews after you've listened here, I'm talking to sports photographer and the new Irish Press Photographer of the Year, James Crombie, who in 2020 and 2021 has had to think about as far outside the box as is possible.
Everything stopped. All sport stopped for about 3 months. You've seen it in the UK. As a sports photographer, it's a little bit worrying, you know what I mean? Because that's what we all do.
And then on Wednesday, a photo project called Women of War, a 35-year photo project with Pulitzer Prize winner Marissa Roth.
I know this will sound strange, but I was so almost possessed by it. And sometimes I almost felt like I had a hand on my right shoulder, just like steering me along the path.
Friday is, of course, the photo walk edition that we do. And on More Photography Daily, a story about Ouija, the American photographer who unnervingly was at all those chalk lines round a body shots in New York in the 30s through 50s. Our first true crime story, really. Photography Daily is on all your main popular podcast apps. Just look for Photography Daily. Right, back to your questions. This one's actually not a question, Kev. This one is it's a sort of comment. And actually, you could do comments. Sometimes comments are good conversation starters, aren't they?
Indeed.
And this is from Neil Swanson. No, that can't. He must have put that down twice. That can't be his name.
Well, sometimes people marry people with the same surname and they have a double-barreled.
Swanson?
Gemma's parents both had the same surname when they were single.
Did they?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, yep. I didn't know that. Well, there we go. So this is Neil Swanson.
There we go.
Hi, guys. Just a comment on constant light versus flash light for events. Sometimes the only way to do a good job at an event is with flash. Natural light is great. Natural light, though, is sometimes just plain ugly, and there isn't enough of it. Oh, yes. I buy into that one. Natural light sometimes just won't get the job done to satisfy your client. I'm talking light so low that a modern pro Nikon body would have trouble focusing. Have you? I mean, you don't use a lot of flash, do you? If any, actually, Kev.
No, although I am going to learn it because I've got a studio now.
Are you? I mean, yes, that's using your speed light in the studio. Although so many people now use a constant light source, something like an aperture. for that. But in terms of things like speed lights, go docs, and all that kind of stuff, are you more inclined then to start using that stuff in your wedding work?
No.
No? Okay.
Never.
But sometimes, I mean, certainly for the cake shop and so on, I mean, it can save you, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because I don't really want to get involved with it, it does not mean that it's a bad thing. And I know great photographers who do amazing things with it. Shoot all of their weddings. Some wedding photographers I know shoot every single image on flash, even the stuff outside, and you can't tell. And that is the sign of somebody who understands flash.
Yeah. But I mean, he said here, Neil Swanson did, that he was talking with Dennis in the bunker Lee. There's another bunker, yes, over in America. I did this at nearly every event. Here we go. He's talking about this. We shot. It seemed crazy, but sometimes we'd shoot ISO 1600 and higher with bounce flash, and it just works. It didn't look lit by flash at all. We did very little direct flash on camera. Would we love to leave all that gear home? Yep, but then we'd be in trouble when the light got so low and the event planner had their hand on the dimmer for the chandeliers. Yeah. Try it, he says. Try it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. Try it. You can try it. But I also don't think that's I think there's an alternative method, and that is to embrace the technology, embrace the high ISO, look for the light. If it's light enough for people to see, then it's going to be light enough to shoot. That's my take on it. There will be some light coming from somewhere. And yes, you're not going to be, doing big group shots in that kind of stuff. But, I honestly, personally, it's, one of my marketing elements is that I will not be, walking around late at night flashing you.
I hope not, Kev. Yes.
It's different. Horses for courses, isn't it? That's the point. It would be a really boring world if we all did the same thing.
Did you say horse? How is your horse?
You're going to be in trouble.
I know. I don't care.
The horse is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Star is the name of the horse, isn't it?
Star.
Star.
Which is nice because Rose's middle name is Star.
Oh, no way, really? That's a lovely name.
In Welsh, yeah.
Yeah.
Seren.
Is that what Star is? Oh, that's fantastic. We were going to name it, weren't we? We did for one moment think that we'd possibly name it through the podcast, but I'm not sure that Rosa would have ended up with the name of a horse she really wanted.
No, and also horses come with their own names.
Oh, do they? You can't rename them?
Not really. I don't think there's like a depot place you can go to.
I rename you, yes. All right, your question, then we'll go for Book of the Week.
All right, I've got ready. Strap yourself in. This is from David Pepke.
Right.
And he titles this question, Online Photo Courses, full stop.
All right, okay.
Having recently bought an X-T3, I've looked at Fuji gear, videos, etc. This has resulted in an abundance of Facebook ads with photo courses, masterclasses, and so on. All as to be expected.
Yeah.
But it's made me think.
Right.
Is COVID making photographers give away their expertise in online courses, YouTube videos, and so on? And in essence, training a host of competitors during this COVID crisis? Is the short-term goal of earning money via online courses actually sinking the long-term goal of having a viable photography business? The same tendency, he says, in woodworking, which is his work. YouTube is flooded with people trying to teach because no one can make a living actually doing woodwork. Yeah. Thanks. Your podcast is an anchor in a pandemic storm.
It's very, very poetic. I'm going to attempt to answer this one. The photo film has been something that I've taught and talked about on stages at conferences. We've had it at various things that we've done, Kev, when we've been doing our double act workshop days. And so, I mean, I don't know how many people I've spoken to about photo films and showed photo films to, but only a very, very small percentage of people will actually go away and do what they have learned. Those that do obviously can see, they come along, they think, right, I want to learn about this, and then I'm going to go away and apply it to my business. But it's human, it's just human nature. It doesn't matter what you're learning, whether that be woodworking, photo films, I think only a small proportion of people actually go away and apply themselves properly to what they've learned. And I'm going to give you an example, and this is going to embarrass her. Emily Rainier, who's one of our supporters of this show. Then, you know, I remember Emily coming to do a photo film course with me, and I said to her, you know, you will get more from this if you turn up here knowing how, for example, Premiere works. And lo and behold, when she turned up, she knew exactly how it worked. Because she didn't want to know about Premiere, she really wanted to know about photo films and how to apply it. And she subsequently went away and did it. But I don't think that's everybody.
No, I agree. I think that, you know, whenever I attend courses, which, you know, when the world starts spinning properly, I do. I often think, well, as long as I come away with one thing from the day that I think, yeah, actually that was worthwhile, then I think that's good. Now, you and I are both educators as well, and so we do make part of our living from this stuff. And
yeah,
you know, on the what supports that, yes, we do YouTube, or, you know, when I have my haircut, I'll do YouTube again. Okay. And, you know, yes, they're free, although you do get, you know, a little bit of cash from Google, but nothing substantial. Nothing substantial. No. But the whole point is that it drives business elsewhere. You know, it's a marketing channel, it's a funnel, if you like. Yeah. Now, some of the, some of the people on YouTube make a fortune. We've had a leaky tap for months and months and months. I've got no DIY skills whatsoever. So, I go to Google, I go to YouTube, how to fix a leaky tap. And then the first video that comes up, and the first 5 or 6 videos that come up, these people have got millions of followers, DIY experts, and they will be making thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on YouTube, far more than they would be making from fixing a leaky tap. I guarantee you that. Now, of course, not everybody. And in the end, I couldn't fix the leaky tap, so Milo next door had to do it. But, that's it, isn't it? It's different ways of trying to make a living. And, yes, there's an element of being eager to... I'm going to be a little bit careful, but there sometimes I feel like some people, they just want to be seen as being, right, I'm an educator, I can teach, come on my workshop, it's cheap, or I'll do YouTube, and and sometimes that's more about just because they want to, feel like they're being seen and rewarded in their ego. Only a minority of people, okay? Only a minority of people. But the rest of them, if education is important to them, then they will do a good job of it. And yes, they will be, if they're educating on anything to do with business or photography, then they have to be getting that right. And, it's for a reason. And it's ultimately part of the business. It's a strand, it's a marketing element. If you're only doing it for exposure, then yes, but that's how it starts. That's how that little ball rolls. That little fella on YouTube who's doing a YouTube video, doing a woodworking video, or how to use flash on your camera, and he's only got 300 views and 10 followers. He's giving that information away for free. Absolutely, he's not getting anything from it yet.
Yeah, and I think "yet" is a good word. Just coming back to what I was saying, I think I think there's. Don't be worried that there are people out there teaching courses and you're thinking that everybody's going away and they're going to become super, super professional straight away, because I think a lot of people don't apply it. Does that mean you shouldn't go on a course? No, of course not, because you're going to be one of those people that does apply it, aren't you? Yes, you are. Because a small percentage of people do, a large percentage of people don't. And that's the great thing about workshops. I go on workshops and I look around me and I think, right, I've come here to apply myself to this, and I know some of you lot aren't. And I see that as a competitive advantage. And it's a funny way to look at a workshop, but that is a way of looking at it. But
some of the during the lockdowns, I've spent an inordinate amount of time on webinars, watching webinars, not giving them, and they're all free. Some of them were not. For example, the Martin Parr Foundation. There's one with Joel Meyerowitz next week or the week after. It's £3 to spend 2 hours live, with Joel Meyerowitz.
Word, yeah,
and that's pennies, absolutely pennies. But other than that, I've spent a lot of time on webinars business webinars generally. I've spent time on webinars from Zoom themselves, teaching me how to use Zoom. All that kind of stuff, and that's free. And they're not getting anything from that apart from the fact that I'm learning about their products, and that's ultimately where it comes from. I honestly think there's once you can avoid that, once you can step over that line of kind of ego, I think, and like I say, it's a very minority of people, but it is there. You can see it. Once that's gone, people are genuinely educating for the right reasons, and it's. I hate those ones where, you do a webinar or you do a free webinar, for example, and it's all about, this is my life, this is how great I am, or this is, I had a really bad upbringing, and here's some tears from me, and and then they show you 4 pictures, and at the end they say, and by the way, I'm doing a $700 workshop, or you can come on my course or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, no, that's not right. That doesn't sit right with me. Be honest about that up front. Say, this bit is a load of bollocks, but what I'm going to do at the end is sell you something that's useful. Then you can do that.
Have you ever been on a workshop? I know I have, for plain validation. I.e., you think, right, I think I'm on the right path, but I kind of just need somebody to show me that it is, because I don't think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, I've done things like that, I think. I've sat in on courses, seminars at SWPP, WPPI, all over the place for similar things. These people have got a big name, but, I feel like, I can kind of match them. Yeah, and then I go and sit there, and then I realize actually I can't match them.
Well, what I didn't want to say there, it wasn't the cross arm brigade where you think, oh, you're no better than I am. I don't mean it for that reason. I think sometimes you look at somebody talking, you think, yeah, I really admire you, and I think I'm on the right. I think I'm on the right journey here, and you're validating me. And yeah.
And that's a good thing, isn't it? Yeah. The cross arm brigade, I love that. That's brilliant. That does remind me of the SWPP. And the at the SWPP, by the way, the convention is a wonderful thing, don't get me wrong, but you do get people, you get them, they're either in the front row with their crossed arms and their legs wide open if they're men, staring at you, and or they stand at the back leaning against a pillar with their arms crossed. And because they're too important to actually take a seat.
Yeah. Done this, been there. What have you got to show for yourself? Go on.
Yeah, that cracks me up. They usually come in about 5 minutes late, so they can make an entrance.
Yeah. But can we just say the SWPP and WPPI and all the others is a wonderful thing.
Actually, don't get me wrong, they're brilliant. I've spent many great days at both of those conventions. We've all experienced that.
As Michael Bolton once said, he said love is a wonderful thing, didn't he? He didn't say the SWPP was a wonderful thing, but I'm sure he would if he thought about singing a song about that. Should we do a book, Kev?
Yeah.
Is it time for Kev's Book of the Week?
Yeah, another big one. Mm-hmm. Just moving my microphone, sorry.
I wonder what that was. I thought for a minute you were on some sort of... Kev was on hydraulics.
See, I've got my glossy white desk now, listen. That's just me moving my microphone.
Oh, I thought for a minute you were on a standy-up, one of those electric standy-up desks.
No, everything in this room is amazing. No standy-up electrics in that. Right, so we've got Henri Cartier-Bresson. Henri, or Henri, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Scrapbook. Oh. Now, I've had this for, got to be 10 years or so. And I have to say, it's one of those books that sits there. It's quite big, it's quite heavy. But I don't really dip into it that often. And this week I thought, hang on, I'm gonna take a proper look at this book. And it was only then really that I understood why this book even exists. And so ultimately what happened was back in I think it was 1946, 47, something like that. Off he trotted to New York, and he took a whole load of prints in a briefcase or a bag of some kind, and he bought a scrapbook, effectively a sticker book, And he stuck them all in one by one. And that's the book that he would go around to all of the curators, to the Museum of Modern Art, and to all of the exhibitions, and say, look, here's my sticker book, here's my scrapbook with all of my pictures. And what we have in this book, which was actually not printed until 2006, is those pictures. 300 odd prints. So they're real early stuff. Not necessarily his more famous work, although there's elements of it in there, and that's what makes it really interesting to me. So, for example, on page 79 is one of his most famous pictures, which is the cyclist. You've got the spirally staircase, and the cyclist going by slow shutter speed. So the cyclist is in kind of movement, and that's one of his most iconic pictures, if you like.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, throughout, you're going to come across them, and there's multiple kind of descriptions of these images. So you have multiple versions of some of the images. So, for example, on page 140, you've got, technically a triptych, if you like. So you've got two vertical images and a horizontal of pretty much the same scene. So, we're kind of looking at snapshots of a moment, multiple shots. Now, Henri Cartier-Bresson was kind of famous, really, for, even though he was shooting film, for not being uncomfortable about shooting multiple shots to get the decisive moment.
Yes.
So that idea of the decisive moment from him was actually in a series, usually in a series of images. So you see that a lot throughout the book. You see a lot of kind of multiple frames that are very similar, and then the decisive moment is there, and it's really, it's a wonderful book, and it's square, it's big, it's nice and heavy. But actually, the prints in the middle of certainly the single side images are very small. I mean, maybe 4 by 2 inches, 5 by 3 perhaps. So I like that, because it brings your eye directly to that picture. It's not huge. They've made a really good use of the pages for the horizontal images. They've just literally stuck the middle small, not too small, but it makes a real beautiful aperture for the images. Now, of course, what you're going to find as in almost all Bresson books is quite a lot of text and anecdotal stuff and references to other moments in time. There's newspaper clippings. There's all kinds of other stuff in there. I'm looking at now page 46, Henri Cartier-Bresson, Seville, Spain, 1933. And it's really interesting, because obviously photography is about nostalgia, clearly, and we talk about that a lot. And then I'm looking at this now, Seville, 1933, probably right bang in the middle of the Spanish Civil War. Buildings bombed, and then there's a lot of the stuff from Cuba. I mean, there's a lot of contact sheet cutouts as well, which is really interesting. It is a photo book in that you can just open a page, look at the picture, and appreciate it. But also, it's an educational book too. It's worth reading. It's worth looking at. There's certainly the stories about the negatives and when negatives were destroyed and elements like that. I mean, this is we talked last week about art history and photography history. Yeah. This is the kind of book that would be a textbook for that. I'm reading now just briefly on page 25 about the research that the curator's doing, and there's photos that are missing, and they're trying to figure out where these photos are, and the contact sheets. There's diary entries. If you could pick this up and turn it into a Netflix documentary, boom, there's your money. Yeah.
Oh, blimey, yeah.
Brilliant book.
Didn't you tell me a story about you were talking about the fact that he wasn't shy of going back to get another decisive moment, if you want to describe it in that manner, about the famous man leaping across the pool photograph. Was it you that told me something about that? I'm sure it was. I'm
not sure it was me that told you, but I've heard similar things. Yeah. What I did tell you about was that the decisive moment is a translation. So his original, his seminal work, if you like, the decisive moment, is a translation. It doesn't actually mean, click, there's a decisive moment. No. It effectively means a moment in time. It doesn't mean the photographer is getting that decisive moment. So yeah, and the the lad jumping over the puddle. Yeah, there's lots of stories. If you dig into the Reddit forums, there's all kinds of things on there. Yeah, right, but anyway, other than that, it's great. I don't think anybody really. When you look, there's also the contact books, Magnum contact sheets, and of course, Henri Cartier-Bresson was the founder of Magnum. Regardless whether it's. I don't think he ever said, "I take one picture. It's a decisive moment. No. I take, and that's it." He never said that. That just became
the stuff of legend, isn't it? Really?
Stuff of legends because of this translation of that book. Yeah. And now people go, well, hang on. He took 15 frames to get that, or not 15 frames, but 12 frames to get that one picture. That's not a decisive moment.
Talking of the decisive moment, you've clearly got that book. I noticed on Abe here that if you get quite an old copy, 647 quid.
Yeah, first edition, a decisive moment.
Yeah,
very difficult to get hold of.
Yeah, well, there's one here. Do you want it?
No, not that price.
Okay. Oh well, I'd buy it for you for Christmas, but obviously if it's signed, you can't have it. That's a bit of an in joke. Sorry,
I can't wait till the bookshops open at Hay again. I'm going to be up there.
Right, here's one. Oh, by the way, can I just quickly say, Kev, we do need some more questions. I know. A couple of weeks ago we got them flooding in again on the Facebook. We could do with some email ones as well. So click at fujicast.co.uk. Peter Foot. Hello, Kev. Hi, Neil. Thanks for reading out my question today. Oh, that would have been a couple of weeks ago. You can have another one, Pete. He's gone with a recommendation. I think we suggested he buy the 23mm f2 for his X Pro 2. There we go. Mm-hmm. Happy customer. Although the extra light on the 1.4 would have been welcome, one of my principal uses for the lens will be photographing the grandkids. So the improved autofocus that you spoke about made the decision much easier to capture those fast-moving nippers. And cheaper too. Another question for you. I don't have a great deal of money in the bank. That's because Kev keeps telling you to buy stuff. But it's certainly not growing with any of the banks in the UK paying any interest. Anyway, this made me think, would I be better investing in photographic equipment and helping me justify myself to spend a lot more money on another camera? So, if you had 5k available and wanted to purchase a camera, which would at least hold its value over the next 3 to 5 years, and maybe even increase, which camera would be the best investment? Ooh. Well, the trouble is with any of your digital stuff that you buy now, none of those are going to be your best investment because they're clearly just going to be superseded by something else, like buying a computer, isn't it?
Well, and also the batteries, you won't be able to get the chargers.
Yeah. So we are talking about something like a good classic Mamiya or something like that, 6.7, or a camera like that, which is a kind of a bit of a work of art as much as it is something that you want to work with on your art.
Yeah, I'm not in the position to, when I buy a camera, it's not for investment, it's to use, but that's circumstance. Yeah. I'd love to be in a situation. I'd love to be a camera collector. That would be lovely. If I had $5,000, I would, and I'm looking for a camera for, investment purposes rather than necessarily to work with. I think I'd probably look for a camera that has been used by a famous photographer.
Yes. Now, I saw where you were going with that, Kev. Yes.
Yeah. And it would sit on my shelf rather than one that's, because, you can buy Leicas, you can buy Mamiyas, you can buy Hasselblads and all that kind of stuff. But if you're never going to use them, but if you're buying something, really for investment, then it needs to have, legacy. And, I back in the day, I used to sell rugby memorabilia and I used to buy and sell match-worn rugby shirts. And, those things, people used to, I'm telling you now, the money people would change hands for match-worn rugby shirts was insane. It was great. I loved it. But it was, people, proper collectors of things will spend money, but it's all to do with the provenance.
Well, from sublime to ridiculous. I mean, I wonder how much, for example, McCullen's camera, which stopped the bullet, that must be worth a fortune. And then maybe something like Bailey's, one of his cameras from, who do you think you are? David Bailey. What was that camera? The Olympus Trip.
Olympus, yeah.
Yeah. I've got one of those behind me. Not obviously David's. That would be worth a bit of money.
Yeah, I think some of them are more like almost priceless, basically, because they'll be handed off to museums and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I would, this sounds quite ridiculous, but I once did a talk in it was when I was in Argentina, I think, and somebody came up to me with a camera, and they wanted me to sign their camera, and I was like, "Do you not want me to buy you a beer instead? This is just ridiculous." He was like, no, I want you to sign it because I'm going to sell it. He already had somebody lined up to buy this camera. And I was like, that's like brilliant. I'm very happy and quite embarrassed by it all, but also I was thinking, hang on, then I should be taking a cut of that sale.
Businessman.
So I remember going to, when I did that interview with James Revilius' wife years and years and years ago, and I went to his house, her house, and of course he's dead. And all his cameras are just lying around.
I know,
just there on the kitchen table and on the sofas and everything, and all these prints on the floor. And I could hardly walk without stepping on these prints. And I'm thinking, these are incredible. This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. That's what that's where I'd like to.
God, can you imagine that if she'd have said, "Kev, do you fancy a camera?
Do you want that?
What one would you like to take, Kev?" I know you would never have said yes. You're far too good a boy to have said yes to that. Or would you? I like the way the silence.
At the time, no. Now, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't realise that you signing things made them worth a fortune, Kev. Next time you're around here, could you sign my left buttock?
Isn't it ridiculous? Absolutely. We're all the same, for God's sake.
Oh, no, we're not all like Mullins. We're not all like Mullins. And that's it for another week. We will return next week. Thank you to our guest today, Danny Lawson. Thank you for your questions. Yeah, just a quick shout out to say if you'd like to email them in, then click at fujicast.co.uk. Is one way to get your questions in. The other way to get them in is to go to the Facebook group, of course, isn't it, Kev?
Indeed. Facebook group, top of the thread. There's a question. And don't forget, #FujiCast print swap.
And we'll be doing that for what, another 4 or 5 weeks, did you say?
Yeah.
That seems reasonable. So send your questions in. Thank you to all those that are supporting the show by Patreon. We'll continue doing our bumps to the fronts. If you'd like to see the links for today's show, just go to the show page and they'll all be there. Have a good week, Kev. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.